Thus, says Monsignor Glenn in his work, thus the natural disposition one may have for study is a natural virtue. Divine faith is supernatural. Fortitude is acquired. Bodily strength is physical. Wisdom is intellectual. Faith is theological. And fortitude is also a moral virtue. And then to repeat what I said at the beginning, the Holy Spirit is the head of all these virtues. Okay? Informs all these virtues, we could say. So the supernatural virtues of hope, faith, and charity are infused in us at baptism. We know that. And so the Holy Spirit gives rise to the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, okay, which in turn inform our reason and will, which then trickle into our natural dispositions, okay, of prudence, justice, then fortitude, and then temperance. Okay. So remember, prudence is all the other three virtues kind of hinge on prudence. Okay, we don't even know that, but that is the case. Okay, so for us, when our prayers ascend, then obviously God's grace descends. But what form that takes varies, is almost immeasurable. Right? It varies and is almost immeasurable. So regardless of the form, though it equips you for action, right? So no matter what form it takes, okay, it's gonna equip you for some action. So whether that action be serious, right, whether you're discerning the religious life or marriage, or much less serious, pizza with anchovies or without, okay, along with everything in between, so from the serious to the very less serious, okay, the Holy Spirit equips you for action, for that action, right, for that decision, okay, in some way, which we don't always concretely see or feel. But the Holy Spirit not only renders us fit for virtues, okay, so that's one thing, but it also gives rise to dispositions, okay, as that same Dominican points out, for receiving dispositions, for receiving spiritual inspirations and impulses needed for producing perfect works. This is why St. Thomas, following St. Augustine, added to each of the virtues a gift that perfects it. So with each of the virtues that we know, there's a gift, there's a corresponding gift that perfects it, okay? And so we don't get too lost, suffice it to say that the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit correspond to each virtue, right? Wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, piety, and fear correspond to one of the virtues that hopefully we have in some degree. And all of this helps us as an individual, as an organism, as a creature here on earth to supernatural happiness over our lifetime. And so to take a step back, okay, prayer aids us in our aesthetical struggle and purification here, okay? Ridding ourselves of selfishness, which often impedes the will of God in our life, as we know, and really also impedes the freedom of the Holy Spirit, right? Who does, and of course, for us Americans, who doesn't love freedom, right? We love freedom. We hold it up perhaps higher than we should sometimes, right? Or we have a misunderstanding of it at times. And so, yes, today we are asking God to strengthen those virtues of faith, hope, and charity, that they may really animate us. That is, that prayer and action are more closely aligned. And so rather than asking ourselves, is what I did right or is what I did wrong, we might ask ourselves, did I abuse the freedom God has given me today, right? In some way, right? But, okay, yes, perfection, we know, cannot be had in this world. Okay, St. Thomas would say that, others would too. And we are weak, but living according to the Spirit really is true freedom. We know that. We know that. For anybody who's struggled and overcome something, we know that, right? We live in true joy, true freedom. Okay, not license, right? That's always the classical problem that we run into in the modern world, is that Everything becomes rights, right? What I have a right to, when some of these things are just privileges. But I digress. And so is it not ironic, right, that this morning we celebrate the Holy Spirit, right, in the form of the tongues of fire, which brought about unity, while in varying degrees throughout our union there's rioting. There's rioting, right? We know that. Anybody who's watched the news would see that. And I recall a couple of years ago, Clarence Thomas, he's a Supreme Court justice, Catholic. In fact, he was in seminary at one point. He was on a news outlet, and he said, he quoted the phrase on many of our coins. It says, as we probably may or may not know, e pluribus unum, which means from or out of many, one. And he said, we have the pluribus, but what is the unum? What is the unity, right? Where's the oneness? And for us, the answer is simple as we end our prayers, right? In the unity of the Holy Spirit. And so living in that spirit, using that freedom, can only bring about those fruits many of us desire in our families and homes, right? We know the 12 fruits, but I'll highlight 3 of them: joy, kindness, gentleness, right? Who doesn't love a gentle father, right? We don't want a harsh father, right? Who doesn't like a kind mother, okay, obviously. And then who wants joyful kids? Every parent, right? So traveling all over the creation, for example, right, to bring about these gifts of these fruits of the Holy Spirit, right, to go on vacation, right, to exotic places with your family, okay, can't do that in itself, right? It can dispose the family, perhaps, right, to go on a nice vacation, to get away from Texas. Yeah, that's maybe we don't want to go away from Texas right now, but especially with the other states on the East and West Coast, which are more dictatorial. But yeah, going on a family vacation can dispose us to be open to these fruits of the Spirit. But it's not the only thing, right? It can't produce it. It's not salvific necessarily. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with traveling, somewhere, spending your hard-earned money to take the family and get away. That's a good thing. It's not evil in itself, right? Everybody has as the song goes, everybody knows a little place like Kokomo, right? But certainly a trip like that is conducive to those things, as I just mentioned. But any change, really, if it's not grounded in the Spirit, in God, is going to be fleeting. It'll be fleeting, and we know that. And we should. I think it's a good reminder too, also, that in God's condescension, God remains the same, right? His condescension to us, he always remains the same. The alteration has to take place in us, and we hope. We went through Lent, we had Ascension Tide, and now today we're celebrating Pentecost, right? And so we hope, by God's grace, that there is some change. It doesn't mean it has to be a dramatic change. That'd be great. But the alteration has to take part in us, and we have to participate in that. Okay, otherwise we can put up a brick wall, and not change, and it won't be good, right? And so concretely, I mentioned the faith, hope, and charity animating us, and then the Holy Spirit strengthening us and confirming what was given to us in baptism. But how? Okay, practically speaking, how? So I would say for mothers and fathers, we've had all this time. Why don't you let the Holy Spirit animate you this week, right, to do some of those things around the house that you've neglected,